I hit record, even though my fingers seem to be all thumbs with the keyboard today. And I'm with Carol Painter. Carol, thanks for being back on the podcast and doing a session with me. We just figured out this is your third session on the podcast. You are on episode 111 and 121. So, and this, I don't know what episode this is going to be. So talk to me for a second about where you are right now in your writing journey.
Well, I'm still heavily immersed in my one and only novel, debut, copious other adjectives I could think of, and thoroughly enjoying the process still, which is probably why I sort of stagger along quite happily. And really now into the third act in a massive rewrite, really. Having worked slowly through this version, a lot of it with you, Jeff, which, as I think I've said before, and I still feel this very strongly, just making things active and bringing more dialogue, and changing things around a bit. It just made it come alive. It's a big leap up from the previous version. So I'm feeling good about it.
Yeah, and I love working on your novel. It's a lot of fun. I've actually really, I haven't gotten to read the ending yet, so I'm very excited to see where it goes. You gave me the big twist the last time we had a session, which we didn't record for the podcast, and or two sessions ago, I can't remember. And now I really want to know where everybody ends up. So I'm gonna share my screen. What questions do you want to cover today? Because I have my agenda, but you and I have worked together enough that I know that most of the time what I want to talk about is not actually what's going to help you. It's just what's going to entertain me. So what do you want to work on tonight?
I think several things have come up. They're not huge things, but they're enough to be the essence of this session through the piece we've got here. So I think reflection, inner thoughts, and how best to make them really work.
Okay.
Time, what's the word? It's probably a technical word for it, but if you're going, there's this tension all the time between chronological order, which is very rigid and limiting, I find, to moving forward in time. And then when you bring in inner thoughts or some reflection or whatever that takes you out of that, setting the scene right when you come back to what's happening right now.
Gotcha. So, okay.
A lot of awkwardness around that. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple of things. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. Where do you do that? I'm trying to remember where you jump out of time in this piece.
See, and I'm worrying now because I'm writing another part at the moment, which has got
we can 100% talk about that. Well, you do have the reflection of them talking about.
Yeah, and give me a thought on this. Give me a. I think that's certainly a good talking point. We could start with. Sure.
Okay. So the piece is in two halves. The first half, your vehicle character, Clarissa, is walking with some of her students, and they are telling her about what happened earlier that day. That's the time jump. It is here. And then the second half of the piece is a conversation between Clarissa and her mother.
Yes, so just to modify that first part, it's not something that happened earlier that day. It happened on a public holiday called Children's Day, the day before, when there had been a holiday.
The day before. Okay. So yeah. You made it very clear. That's my mistake, not yours. It is very clear that it happened the day before. So your second half is really, really strong. And I don't have a lot of notes for it. Your first half is good, but you're going to see me wanting a lot more. What I kind of want to do is start in your second half and then come back and do the top. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, because it's so strong. You don't have a lot to, I don't think you have a lot of work to do here.
It's also the more important part than the beginning.
What'd you say?
It's the more important part of this excerpt.
I don't know. The emotional connection, the what I really liked about the second half is the conversation between her and her mother is very strong.
Good.
And that's, I think, part of my problem with the whole chapter, Carol, was that the second half is so strong, it overshadows the first half. So we need to bring that first half up to the second half's level. It doesn't need to be the same emotional intensity. It just needs to be the same level of intimacy with Clarissa for the reader.
It's probably about, I would say, about a sixth of the whole.
It is. You're right. I keep calling it half, but it's not half. It's like a fourth. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into our conversation with her mom. You have this the conversation is going to have a really solid emotional build. But at the start of it, she's just finished talking to these children, and it has kind of a bumbling start to it emotionally. So I want to smooth out that bumbling start. Does that make sense? So here's kind of this paragraph right here. Now home, she dumped her gear on the bed, kicked off her sandals, and filled the glass. But the unease she felt about Tumo persisted. So we have her in a state of emotional uneasiness because she just got this information about this kid, which we'll go back and look at it in a minute. If only she eyeballed the place where he stayed.
The word thing. So only she could.
Oh, I think it reads fine. See what really went on, she might be able to help him more. So we have her in this state of kind of uneasiness and like strategically planning. She wandered to the doorstep and sat, sipping occasionally, watching the chickens scattering dust as they darted in and out of the hill. Her phone rang. So you can see how we're very intimate with her here. We have her inner thoughts. We know what's going on. And we know she's in this state of uneasiness. Then all of a sudden in this paragraph, we become a passive observer. She's sitting by herself watching chickens, but we are now shut off from what's happening in her head.
Okay.
And it disconnects us from intimacy. It makes this is the first place where there's like a hiccup from intimacy. So, she wanted just giving me a couple more words here to let me know what's happening. She wandered to the door inside. She wandered to the door and sat, sipping occasionally, watching chickens scattering dust as they darted in and out from the gardens further up the hill, trying to think of ways that she might get to Tumo's house. Does that make sense? Giving me that emotional continuancy from the paragraph before.
Yes.
And then I'm dropping this her phone rang on its own line because I want it to stand out as an interruption to what's happening, because this is your pivot point, right? Great paragraph here. Again, like bringing me into her emotional state. She gritted her teeth, anticipating, but apprehensive as to who it would be. For weeks, she'd been ignoring Leah's calls and emails. Just once her mother returned to New Zealand after she enforced the prolonged non-contact, had she actually answered. Now, you go on to summarize this conversation where she yelled at her mother. Do we get to see this in an earlier chapter?
No, and so this is a good discussion, because I deliberately use that to summarize there, because there are so many other parts of their interaction that we do see step by step of the changing. I did not want that as well, or the thing will be 200,000 words and we'll still be going. So I there deliberately decided to summarize, because in the big scheme of things, it's not that important. Or have I given it, by putting that last sentence or last two sentences in, have I elevated it sufficiently that you think that made you think we need to see it? Should I be playing it down a bit more there?
Well, this is the problem with all summaries. The problem
Yeah.
with summaries is we're always left with the question of, if this is important, should we see it? If it's not important, do we need to mention it at all? And part of me wonders why you mention it at all. I don't know I don't know that you need it.
I suppose it's connecting up the last interaction that we do see between her and this interaction. It's kind of like bridging. This is not going to be the first call where she has a chance to vent. She's already done that once. So she's already just vented, dumped, thrown stuff at her mother. And this is one step on from there.
Yeah. Why is it important that she has an opportunity to vent before this one?
I just think logically, for what happened, and then her mother went back to New Zealand, the first time that she spoke to her mother after that, she's not going to be at all conciliatory. She's still furious, and she's done that. And she's still feeling distant. She's still feeling, in this scene here, she's still feeling very aggrieved. She's still got a lot of, anger, but she's not at that fiery hot stage. She's vented that, and we've got a period of about 2 months that's gone by.
Yeah. See, I would argue, Carol, and this is only because we've worked on your story and I know your previous chapters. I would argue that she was furious. We saw her process that, like we, the reader, saw her process that feelings with her friend, whose name I always get wrong. And they had that moment of connection where she processed what happened with her friend. We then saw her character change start to take shape when she goes out and meets this family. And she has this not long, but she has a nice connection with this family. And we know that time has passed. I don't need her to vent at her mother. As your reader, I'm watching her grow. And part of the problem here is when you tell me, oh, there was this moment before the character growth you saw where she was maybe the worst version of herself. That makes it, in the character growth arc, we've had these victory moments now where we're seeing her come into her own, and you're dragging me back to the old her with this summary. And so part of me is like, let's work this conversation so it's their first one. Because I don't need her to be mad. She's grown.
You just said something that was really important in my brain, which is about, I think why I've fallen into this is because I'm thinking we have to show the stages in this by showing Leah and Clarissa. However, the fact that it's already been shown in a different way, I've overlooked. And the readers read that, so that's fine. So you're absolutely right. This doesn't need to be played out.
And that beautiful conversation you have between her and the friend where they make the connection for the first time. And then you also have that great scene where the friend abandons her in the market, and she gets furious and she feels all of these feelings.
Yeah.
And you write beautifully in that scene what the rage she expresses at her friend for having this messed up day at the market is a residual of her feelings with her mom. Does that make sense?
Yes. If anything, I can just look at that and see if there's not already a reference to her hurling shit at her mother, venting, in something like that in that discussion with Serena, then maybe I just put a phrase in or something to what's there that covers it off.
You can totally do that. I'm going to again say, I think this conversation you've written works fabulously as their first conversation.
Okay.
Because while Clarissa is growing, you've established that their relationship is emotionally stunted. And this conversation is about their relationship being emotionally stunted.
Good.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think, and again, Carol, it's totally up to you and what makes sense for you. I think you can end this with like, she gritted her teeth, anticipating but apprehensive as who it would be. For weeks, she'd been ignoring Leah's calls and emails. Right. I think you can say for months she'd been ignoring Leah's calls and emails. And then all I think is you need a transition sentence here that's like, but today was her birthday. Could she ignore her mother on her birthday? And then there we are. Like now we're back into the, like, why is she answering the phone? Does that make sense?
I just wondered if I needed to reinforce that it was her birthday there for that reason, actually. So, yeah.
And then down here, this sentence, you get you have a paragraph here that I've totally deleted about emails. The problem with emails is that they're pretty unemotional unless you have a character read them out loud. So the reader won't emotionally connect to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I haven't thought that.
So like the way we connect emotionally to things is through the vocalization, or well, it's through the interaction of characters. An email is not it's too separated. So if you want an email to emotionally matter to the reader, you need Leah to read it, look at Serena and goes, I can't believe this. Can I read this to you? And Serena will go, read what to me? And she'll go, look at what my mother said. Noted. She said noted. Now,
no, Clarissa was saying noted.
Oh, noted. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, but you get the point that like now we've got the like energy of the back and forth that brings the emotional context. Whereas if you're just like, Leah read the email and was mad about it. And the email said blah 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 blah. There's no emotional context there, right? Like we need the expression of characters interacting in their voices to care about the emotions of the moment. So again, I deleted it because I don't think you need it. I think you're great without it. I think she can just be ignoring every email and ignoring every phone call, and she's going to pick up on her birthday because it's her birthday.
But Leah's trying blimmin' hard from the other end.
Yeah.
To keep it going because she doesn't want to give up. And Leah probably, even though she's quite contained and quite restrained and thoughtful in how she approaches things, I think she would have started pushing stuff into the emails that she hoped would get a reaction, so Clarissa would pick up the phone.
Yeah.
So it's 100%. A little bit in this situation where it's communications challenge. But I think, I take your point about the emails, and that's good.
Yeah. So here we get a little disconnect. She scrambled to her feet and grabbed the phone out of her bag on the bed before it stopped ringing. So the scrambling to her feet, I mean, and this is 95% my preference and 5% an actual problem. That makes it sound like she wants to answer the phone. But up here, we've established her reluctance.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
So she doesn't need to scramble to her feet. She needs to rise to her feet and plod over to the bed, hoping Leah will hang up before she answers the phone. Right? But when it doesn't stop ringing, which communicates Leah's persistence, she has to answer it. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Moving that up is good.
Yeah, so I took this line you had, Clarissa braced herself for a dose of birthday saccharin, and I moved it forward because it translates how we hear her voice. I will say your conversation is so strong. Dialogue tags become a burden. Not to us, not to the reader, but to you as the writer. Because where you put them, you don't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation. I can almost feel you struggling with it because you don't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation, but there's certain things you have to say to interpret what's being said.
Well, I do the thing that probably a lot of us do. I have it at the beginning and I think, no, that's not right. And I put it at the end, it's not right. Now I'll break it in the middle of it. No, that does such and such,
Yeah.
Because I read all your stuff about where the dialogue tag goes.
Yep.
And I also know that with two of them like that, it's very clear who's speaking, so we don't need much. But I'm trying to build in the thought, the inner thought, right?
And the body language that interprets, like this line here, celebrating the existence of your kids, Clarissa half chuckled. I guess. You have to have that half chuckle. Like that's important. It
Right?
interprets how we hear the line. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so it's a I just want to let you know I was feeling your pain. I was like, the conversation is so strong. You want to take all of the tags and all of the inner thoughts out and just let the dialogue stand, but then you lose the emotional context of what's going on. Um,
I know what the problem is with the children thing. That's fine.
oh,
Yeah.
do you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's a small. I wasn't even going to mention that because it's a small thing.
Yeah, it's
Um,
fine. I can message it.
yeah. I want another short exchange here because this line is so powerful. I want to
Okay.
build up to it. So, how's
Okay.
that young boy, Clarissa, the one you were puzzling over? Did the school find out anything about him? Tumo, he's okay. You
Mm.
sound weird. Do you have a migraine? Are you at the art gallery? So I want another like break here, like Tumo, he's okay, and then have her say like, "Oh, good, good. You know, that's nice. He's okay."
Okay.
And then Clarissa can come in here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We just need another beat.
Good.
Yeah. Um, yeah, but this is again, this is great that you're laying out, and part of the reason I think this works is the first conversation is from this point on, your emotional flow is immaculate. It
That
is
next,
it is perfect.
sorry, Jean. That next paragraph,
Mhm.
it's interesting. I'll see what you think. I think now that the that's amazing at the end is wrong for Leah's voice. I don't think that is her at all. And I'm thinking how better to say that. She's suddenly realizing she hasn't had any of these migraines she's had all these decades. And we know, well, hopefully the reader's going, yeah, that's because you've unburdened yourself with this from the secret, but I'm not spelling it out. But it's just dawning on her. But I don't think that's amazing is Leah's voice. And I don't know quite how to explain that. It's just the hymn, especially. Even
Yeah,
amazing is not her, I don't think.
I the reason it worked for me is because it felt awkward.
Yes.
And this is an awkward conversation. They're
Mm.
not yet talking about what they need to talk about. They're like beating around the bush. So for me, that's amazing felt like I don't know, kind of like I'm searching for what to say and I can't say it. That's how I read it.
Okay, well, what I wanted it to do was for Leah to sort of suddenly think about the fact she hasn't had any migraines since those months ago when she came over and unburden this lifelong secret. So
Mm,
that's what I was trying as an inner thought for Leah, I suppose. But she
yeah.
said it, maybe it should be an inner thought, not a said aloud, actually.
No, I wouldn't head hop. I'd keep because all you get of Leah in this conversation is her voice on the phone.
Yes.
Um,
Mm.
what
Oh, yeah.
remind me of Leah's voice just so I make sure I'm right. She's emotionally guarded
Mm-hmm.
and not proper but often formal.
Yes.
Um,
And quite thoughtful about how she speaks. So she's not spontaneous. And she would talk mostly in full sentences,
yeah.
longer sentences.
Yeah, she has it, which is part of what I like about what you're doing in this conversation is her voice is modulated to a place of discomfort because she's not talking in longer sentences. There's none of her story here. Like she usually tells these stories. There's none of that happening here, which is really nice. Um, I might take, I see what you're saying about the line. I might take it like, you know, the sort of stuff I told you about when I was over. No migraines though, comma, which is interesting. I hadn't realized that.
What did you say? No migraines,
No
though.
migraines though, comma, which is interesting. I hadn't realized that. Like just let
Okay,
her go ahead and say it. Does that
better.
make sense? That might be because you'll give her more words. It gives her that like more formal voice. Um,
Mm.
Yeah. And then I like Clarissa's line because it's that like half paying attention. We're not talking about important things. Why did I even answer the phone?
Yes.
So I wouldn't make it if you change it to like, that's interesting. I'd have her say like interesting, what? Right? Like it's a nice, yeah. And it really
Clarissa's,
does.
sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, yeah.
Clarissa's sort of in a real balancing act here because she doesn't want to be talking to her mother really,
Hmm.
emotionally. She doesn't want to spend and she doesn't want to spend time on boring stuff. Yet increasingly, she's got a whole agenda of things that she's wanting to talk to her mother about, and she's gradually needs to know some stuff. So she's got a dilemma.
Yeah, and it's not what you're doing that's really nice that I like is that at the first of the conversation we get old Clarissa. Because this is the interesting what Clarissa yawned, weary herself given the dull conversation. That's the people pleasing Clarissa that did whatever her mother wanted her to do. But it's not because at the beginning of the novel, you have a Clarissa that's more searching for herself, wandering for herself, and is more a pleaser than the Clarissa you have now at the end of, third act of the novel,
Mm-hmm.
who's found her voice and isn't going to hesitate later to say to Leah, this is what I want to talk about. Right.
Yes.
So part of what makes the conversation that you've written really powerful is this early modulation of Clarissa picks up the phone when she doesn't want to, is talking to Leah when she doesn't want to, but it's not the same like needing to do it well that she used to have. Right? Like she doesn't need to
Mm-hmm.
talk to her well. She's like yawning, she's weary, she doesn't want to be here. And for maybe one of the first times in the novel, she's showing Leah that. She's showing Leah that she doesn't want to be here. Does that make sense? Yeah, so you did a really great job with it. Um, and I like I see you have to bring the email here. I don't know. I think you could delete this where, you know, you could hint like, I read your email and you said having me brought bad you said that having me brought you and dad back together. What's that about? I like this turn for her. Your inner thought here is really great. Oh, right. Clarissa turned her focus to what was really on her mind. Great agency on her part. Like she's not reacting, she's taking charge, which is really nicely done. Um, yeah, and then here I'm just slowing it down because Clarissa's moment here where she takes charge and as the vehicle makes a choice, we want Leah to respond to that choice. And you already have it. I'm just like you already had her responding. I'm just popping it a little bit more and slowing her down a little bit, like accentuating it more.
I'm
Um,
not sure about the of course you did because I don't want Leah. There's a game playing going on both sides, right? So,
yeah,
oh, so you did read it, because she doesn't know. Clarissa's been, just noted to all these
yeah,
emails. Like maybe she hadn't read any of them. Leah doesn't know that. Now she finds Clarissa has read at least
yeah,
one
yeah,
and probably a lot more. But she doesn't want to say, of course you did. She doesn't want to do
yeah.
that
That's true.
because if it's that tone, I think it's wrong. So she started to go, oh, so you did read? Never mind. And she moves on.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that I agree with you. You need to make sure, however you address this line, that you keep any chipperness out of it because you're playing with a great power balance here where usually Leah is in charge of this
yes.
relationship. And so you're seeing the power change here, which is like, I like that you have her stumbling here. I like that you have her like trying to pivot and the way she's using language, they're like, oh, so you did read ... never mind, said
Mm,
Leah off balance. And then they're like, I suppose well, that must have been strange, right? Like she's not speaking. Usually she speaks in full
Yes,
sentences.
we don't often have dots for Leah. It's
Yeah, she's all, but here
about
it's
her.
perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Okay, good. I
Yeah.
wondered about.
And then like, but dot, dot, dot. Then she paused slowly. She paused, swallowed deliberately, and took a deep breath. Oh, great. Like body language in the middle of a phone call. So great. And then I wanted to add that, like, well, the truth is, we've been talking about spending time apart. So, like,
Yeah.
give her another moment of hesitation
Mm.
as she decides to be vulnerable, but decides to be vulnerable in a way that's going to give her back control of the conversation. Does that make sense? Like, yeah. And I like it. I thought this, I'm just going to keep praising you. This whole thing is so great. It's so well done. I was really excited when I read it. I was like, wow, this is fantastic stuff.
You can
Um,
watch that excitement, Jeff.
yeah. Well, we haven't talked about the first third. Um,
No,
so
true.
yeah, so I thought all of this whole page, you know how I've said this to you before. If you get a page from me with no notes, go ahead and like mint yourself a trophy and put it on a mantle because I almost never give people a whole page with no notes. But I had nothing to say, Carol. Like this conversation is so good. I love the way that you're like here, this is the way you use Clarissa's body language before she speaks and her inner thought before she speaks communicates that silence on the phone that really does express that like power between them. So like you read your father's letter, Clarissa registered the anxious tone that had crept into Leah's voice. Good. Let her stress a bit. She counted to 5. Yep. She stopped. Ugh, so good. Is there anything you want to ask me about what he wrote? Like there's a desperation here that is just not Leah and perfectly not Leah at this moment. Clarissa took an involuntary breath and puffed. Oh, sorry. Clarissa took an involuntary breath and a puff of air bounced around in her throat. She hoped Leah hadn't heard it. Nope. So good. Like it's so great. And I love how if you had just done the dialogue, all we would have gotten is, you read your father's letter? Yep. Is there anything
No,
you want to ask me about it? Nope. But you can see like how using these tags and this inner thought before she speaks just brings so much more
it's a
richness.
trifle immature, isn't it, for a 29-year-old?
Oh, but it's perfect. It's because she's wronged and she's the victim and she's finally finding her power. And it's that like it's a little immature, but we will forgive it 1,000 times over because she deserves this moment. That makes sense. Like she deserves to make Leah squirm, and it's great. And we love it. Like this is a place where your readers are gonna be like, oh, I love this. I love watching Leah squirm and watching Clarissa. And you have to have this moment because I know you want to redeem Leah by the end of the story. You have to have this moment. We have to watch Leah struggle. Um, yeah, again, this is so great. Well, Leah paused. How could one word sound so heavy? Clarissa felt her jaw tense. No, but you said, wait, Clarissa, please, this isn't easy for me either. I had to decide to tell him. I'm not even going to comment on your italics because it's so good. It's so good. Anyway,
You can tell, I mean, Leah, it's really hard for her to talk about stuff that's very personal for her. She's not been in the habit of doing that, especially with Clarissa. So she's every time she's going in her mind, what I'm thinking she's going is, oh, I want to be honest. I'm changing all this behavior from the past. I want to answer her honestly. It's the only way to redeem this kind of. I have to dig deep. I have to come up with this, but it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's you are so I can tell in you writing this chapter, you are so locked in to these two characters, how they're feeling and how their voices work, that things I bet you that I'm commenting on, I bet some of that you didn't even know you were doing intentionally, but you've really knocked it out of the park. It's
I wish it
great.
would work like that all the time.
It's tough, but
Mm,
I feel like in every novel I write, I get like 2 or 3 of these scenes.
really?
I get 2 or 3 scenes where I'm like, ooh,
Eh,
I nailed that.
mm,
And it's not every scene. I don't think it's ever been every scene for me. I get like
mm,
2 or 3, and this one, you nailed it. This is
mm,
great.
thank
Um,
you.
I want you to give me a little bigger beat here. Um,
Mm,
because we're coming to the climax where Leah starts sobbing. I still don't get why you didn't get rid of me. Have an abortion. It's not hard, I had one once. Great reveal from Clarissa. Clarissa drilled deep, the desire to hurl back some of her raw pain she was feeling superseding every other emotion. Perfect. Oh, darling, dot, dot, dot. When? The words were high pitched and eerie. They turned into soft sobs. Why didn't you tell me? I would have. She trailed off. I want, and then you
mm,
had Leah sobbing filled Clarissa's ears. I want Clarissa to dig that knife in another
okay.
turn. Right? You would have what?
I like that. It's
Because
great.
what would she have done? Right? Like you would have what? Yeah, so just dig that in one
Mm,
more beat and then let that be what brings out the sobs. Because here you've written this great line where Leah's still trying to stay in control of her emotions. And once you dig that knife in one more time, that's when she'll lose it. And then this paragraph is perfect. Leah's sobbing filled Clarissa's ears. It was the only sound she could hear. She held the phone away from her body. Her heart was beating fast. She still wanted to lash out, but bizarrely, she also wanted to comfort her mother. The contradictory feelings were messing with her head.
Does that work?
Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect. You bring me perfectly into her emotional space. It
Okay.
is I feel I can see it holding the phone away from her body. I can feel her heart beating fast. And then you explain to me through her inner thought what it is that's causing all of that emotional turmoil. That she is still angry. She's still furious, but she also doesn't want to hurt her mom. And
Mm.
it's a really humanizing and beautiful moment.
But you
Um,
know that feeling as a child when you see your parent cry,
oh yeah.
and it's usually very rare, well,
Yep.
in my experience, but it's incredibly powerful. And for when you're very little, it's extremely so.
Yeah.
But even at this age, yeah.
Yeah. Like I remember right after my father died, well, it was probably a year, or it was probably a year after my father died. I was late for curfew coming home. And I wasn't that late. I was like 10 minutes late. And I remember my mom lectured me about being late for curfew, and she just sobbed. She sobbed and sobbed. And I was like, I'm angry that you are treating me this way. I'm literally 10 minutes late. And I am in deep pain that you are sobbing, that I somehow participated in this moment. Like and you capture it really, really well here. And then following it with the space down, they're using the conversational space aid to give me this line. They said in silence that held the space between them. That's like a frickin' Pulitzer line. I mean, damn it, that's good. It's so good it makes me mad. I don't think you need sure here.
Yeah, I
The lead,
agree.
yeah, I think Clarissa swallowed is enough because we're coming out of this huge
Mm,
emotional moment. So you let Leah kind of ramp into it. Like Leah spoke first, though her voice carried the thick sound that crying can bring. You don't need to tell me details. I'm just so very sorry I wasn't there to support you. I don't need the sure. I just need Clarissa swallowed. Right. Well, it was a different scene. And I love that this is the first thing she said because it's this like note, it's this hint of potential forgiveness.
mhm.
Right. It really communicates that. Um, I got rid of all I can say, Clarissa, is that he, because you have all you can say up here, so I'm just playing with words.
Mm.
Um, I do want to pull back that she's still kind of crying
Mhm.
because we need to ramp down. Like you ramped up to this big emotional moment. Now you need
Mm.
to ramp it down in the same
Mm.
way.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and then here again, you had this is one of those weird places where it's like, where do you put this dialogue tag? Originally you had we did not for a while, but we wanted to be certain we could tell you when you were old enough. Leah had regained her measured tone. It works there. It stays out of the way of her dialogue here.
Mm.
But the problem is it interprets what she's saying. But I don't know that I put it up front, but I don't know that that's better. Leah had regained her measured tone,
Yeah,
getting a
I
hold
don't
of her
know
sobbing.
either because
I
I
don't
read
know. Yeah.
as, I mean, it sounds like she's already done it, but we haven't heard it.
No, we
That's
haven't
the
heard it. Yeah.
problem I have with it being at the beginning.
Yeah.
Um, mm,
And it doesn't necessarily work in the middle. We did. Leah had regained her measured tone.
mm,
Not for a while, but because then it emphasizes that we did, which you don't want to do. So I don't know. I might put it back at the end, but this was one of those places where I was like, this conversation is so strong.
yeah,
These little things start to matter. But it's yeah. Anyway,
agree. Mm.
yeah. It was, and then all the way to the end, I don't think I have any notes for you. It's really, really I was lost in it. I was like, this is
The
great.
crypt is good.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you
That's the
something.
tone.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Mm.
Um,
Now I realize here when she reveals she hasn't read Bernard's letter, even
hmm
though she's looked after it all those years in a sealed envelope,
hmm
when she's brought it over and Clarissa now has it and has read it,
Yeah,
and she has never read it.
never
Is
read
that
it.
too incredible to believe?
No,
So
it's
I
perfect, Leah.
okay, because I had Clarissa sat up, she thought for a moment, and then I thought it needs that bit in the middle all those years. And really, and then she's kind of going, I want to move on here. I want to concentrate on what I don't want to get. She's doing a wee bit. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here
Yeah.
because that could be a whole conversation. I don't believe that. Right, etc., etc.
No,
Move
this
on.
is perfect.
Okay.
The way you have it is perfect because you
Mm-mm.
set up Leah's character so strongly as a character that struggles with control that she would 100% take a letter she didn't want to read and put it in a drawer for 2 decades. That's exactly what she would do.
Respect
Yeah.
his privacy, his leave it as even because he's not around, so she'll leave it as it was, sort of
Leave
thing.
it as it was. And she doesn't want to open it because she doesn't know how it's going to change the situation. There's
And she's
fear
probably a
around
bit
it.
scared of reading what he wrote too, especially after she can't talk about it with him.
Yeah. What if he said bad things about her?
Mm.
Right? Like she doesn't want to know that. So she just locked it in a drawer. And the only reason it works though, because you're right, for another character, it would be unbelievable, but you've painted such a clear picture of who Leah is. This is authentically Leah. And so when Clarissa set up all those years, really, she thought for a moment. And then she pivots the subject. I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do too. I don't want to engage Leah. Like, why did she not read the letter? Yeah.
Actually, when we get to the letter from Leah that Clarissa goes on to
hmm
demand, Leah has to. There's the next scene after
Yeah.
what you hear is
Okay.
Leah looking for her letter.
Oh, nice.
Because she has to send it to Clarissa, she's not going to trust the mail and send the original. She has to copy it. So she has
Yeah.
to open it and read what she'd written.
hmm
So that's different from what happened here with Bernard's letter.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's great. Um, and this like her reamping up the emotion here when it comes around Leah's letter again, you just nailed it. Like it's so good.
So
Um,
it's credible that Leah would not think for a minute that Clarissa would now demand her letter because
yeah, it's a
they
total
become
surprise to her. Yep.
Yeah. But
Because she's so closed. She's so emotionally closed as a character. This is exactly what she had. I don't want to give Leah the last word of this scene.
no, good. Yeah.
Because this scene isn't about Leah. This scene's about Clarissa.
Mm-hmm.
And Clarissa taking the power in the relationship for the first time. So we need a last paragraph that tells me what Clarissa does when she hangs up the phone.
And I don't know what she's going to do when she hangs up at the moment. It doesn't jump out at me what she would do, but I'll have to think about that.
I think that's an important, what you're saying is important because it doesn't end well, right? I hadn't expected you want my letter anymore. The letters were never meant. Please let me think about it. You don't have it. It's not, I just want to get it out of my head around this. All right, Clarissa, please calm down. I promise I'll talk to you again soon. The Clarissa has to say something, realize the phone is hung up, and then I would imagine she's going to scream into the air as loud as she can. Because this is an infuriating way for Leah to end the conversation. Leah is literally running away. It's the worst way to end this conversation. So that's why I need to see Clarissa's reaction here, whether she's going to grip the phone and laugh hysterically because it's so wild that this is happening, or she's going to scream into the air, or she's just going to collapse in her bed exhausted from what happened, right? Like,
the difference between those, it's really good to try them on, isn't it? Because as she screamed into the air, it's sort of frustration.
Yeah.
If she laughed hysterically, it's actually she's sounding more powerful, but it feels wrong for the storyline and where she's at. What was the other option you gave me? What was the other one you
collapses in the bed exhausted?
It's a bit passive.
Yeah.
So I am feeling she's going to be furious because actually Leah's taking the control back.
Yeah, because she's hung up the phone. She's run away. It's the worst.
And she's got the power of whether Clarissa gets what she wants here, which is her Leah's
letter. Yeah.
That's frustrating. And I think it's more along those sort of lines, the emotion.
Yeah. I might combine the two. I might have her be like, I promise I'll talk to you again soon. And then have something that's like, don't you hang up on Clarissa stopped when she realized Leah was gone. Right? Gripping the phone in her hand, she waved it in the air and screamed, of course, slamming the phone down in its cradle. She sat on the bed and started to laugh. Right? And then maybe give her a last line like, of course. And then just like leave it there. You get that combination of like frustration and her like regaining control, not allowing Leah to impact her completely. Does that make sense?
Yes, which is also a progression.
Yeah, because at the beginning of the novel, I would imagine if Leah did something like this, of this tenor to Clarissa at the beginning of the novel, we'd have 3 chapters of Clarissa ruminating on how she's supposed to feel about this and what she's supposed to do. But now you've got this beautifully developed character who isn't going to ruminate on it. She's going to laugh about it, and she's going to go to Tumo's house because she's built her own life. She's developed her own concerns, right? Like she's done her own things. So it's going to frustrate her. It's going to piss her off, but she's not going to wander around thinking about it anymore. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Any questions about this amazing conversation you've heard?
Thank you. No, that's all good.
Okay. Let's jump to the first third.
All right.
So you can see how that is such a powerful ending, right? We need to, this can't match it.
No,
it can't.
I don't want it to match it.
It's not, it can't. But it needs to be as smooth.
Okay.
To set in there, especially in how Clarissa's feeling, because this is the preamble to her conversation with Leah. This sets up how she's feeling when she comes into the conversation. And
Yeah.
this has changed Clarissa. Like, this is the Clarissa who has control and power over her own life and is now caring for other people. So we want to see this so that we can really feel the change moving into the conversation with Leah.
Well,
Does
she's
that make sense?
caring for one person, and that's Tumo,
Yeah.
the kid.
Yeah. I meant it generically. Like, she's picked somebody she's
Okay.
caring for. Yeah. So this opening is just muddled a little bit because it's hard to know who's speaking right away. Did you see the parade teacher? School had ended for the day, and Clarissa and the children whose walk home overlapped with hers were making their way along the edge of the main road. So you mentioned Clarissa and the children, and there wasn't a comma here for parade. You're missing your Oxford comma. So
Yeah.
this could be read as, did you see the parade teacher?
Mm.
And that could be Clarissa saying that, or like as if there's a teacher parading around. Or did you see the parade, comma, teacher? Right. So I would actually probably start this with this sentence, with the descriptive sentence.
Okay.
And then have like, did you see the parade teacher? And then give me the name of the kid who's asking. Right. So and so said. And that's just simplifying this, because again, this is not the point of the chapter. So we want to make this as smooth and as easy to read as we can, because we're getting to the good stuff. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's perfect.
Yeah. Here she has another interesting phrase that kind of makes me like, we want to remove all barriers up front in this section, because the reader doesn't know it, but the reader's about to get emotionally punched in the face. So with this big, massive emotional conversation. So we don't want any barriers at the beginning of this chapter to slow the reader to getting to where we want them to go. So this is another one of those things I would encourage you to sort out. She sort of meant to head down to the stadium. A lazy swim would have been welcome too. Instead, she'd spent a solitary day brooding over her imminent birthday and the new baggage now clinging to it. This summary's great. I don't need to see a day of her brooding. Summarize the crap out of that. But are these contrasting or complementing? Like, did everybody go to the stadium, go swimming?
So they were both very popular things to do on that day. I think to phrase the second bit about the swim, like you've got the or thing in the comment, I think she sort of wants to head down to the stadium or go up to the lagoon for a lazy swim.
Yeah.
That would
fix it. That would totally fix it. Yeah. It's the two sentences standing alone made me go like, wait, I don't know what to do here mentally. And like, it doesn't matter because she spent a solitary day alone. But again, it's just one of those little barriers that like we want to get out of the way because the good stuff is coming. So we want to like enjoy this moment, but move through this moment too. Does that make sense? This is just me avoiding the word birthday. So you had the 29th birthday was turning out to be a non-event. You had said birthday in the paragraph before, so I'm just screwing with words. It is not that important. I wrote the first day of her 29th year on. I meant to write year on Earth, but it's not important.
I think I'm going to say her 29th year.
That will work too. Yeah. And that's less words, which is better. You and I have talked about this before. My brain always needs 3.
Yeah. I'm saying when I read things, I know exactly what you meant there. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, because you've got the no one. I'm just saying this for people that might be listening, but you've got the no one hammered on the door that morning to wish her happy birthday. None of her colleagues had any idea of the significance, and why would they? It pretty much summed up her rudderless life. I'm like, no, I need a third one.
I don't want her to sound poor me. I don't want too much of that.
No, yeah.
It was a bit.
Yeah. Well, you bring in the comedy of it here and why would they? Right? Like, that's funny because it's like, why would they know her birthday? But it is that, like, you might even have, like, even Serena didn't blah, blah, blah. But again,
told.
yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
you might put that in to bring the humor. Like none of her colleagues had any idea of the day's significance, and why would they? Even Serena didn't mention it. But if Clarissa had wanted her to, maybe she should have told her first, right? Like that kind of brings the like lightness of like my pity party is silly because nobody knows it's my birthday.
We can definitely do three.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing me back on track. Uh, I want a reflection here because this is the moment where the conversation becomes kind of serious.
Mm.
We went swimming hole and he jumped and splashed Allie and Jacob, and then Allie splashed me back. Ladder rabbited on as Clarissa's thoughts drifted away. Tumo brought the frisbee. He broke off and shot her a glance. The children knew the frisbee wasn't meant to leave the classroom. I might let us know how she feels about the frisbee here because it's this last, but the man took it away from him. That's where she's gonna. What the man took? What man taking frisbees, right? Like so, I might have a note here about when he says the children knew it wasn't meant to leave the classroom. I might be like, but she had no expectation that they'd actually leave it where she had put it. But the man took it away from him. And then here I want this reflection up front to accentuate this line, but the man took it away from him.
Now, can I try you on? I want to know if this does what you want or not.
Yeah.
What you're saying. So I wondered if can you just take that? Yeah, Tumo was at the swimming hole, yet he hadn't been at school that day. Would be enough to give you to give the feeling, her feeling, or is it still not enough?
It's not enough because I want the moment of I want to feel as the reader the beat of recognition.
Okay.
And by putting it at the end, she has the beat of recognition. She speaks, and then you tell me about it. So
Okay.
I want it to be at the beginning. Clarissa's attention swung back to the present. Tumo hadn't been to school at that day. And then I also want you to mention the man, because a man took it away from him is the big. So Clarissa hadn't been to school that day. Clarissa's attention swung back to the present. Tumo hadn't been to school that day. And the mention of a strange man concerned her. Tumo was at the swimming hole.
I'm thinking that the first thing she says is, "What man?"
Maybe she might lead into it though with the kids. Like I could see her.
She might.
Yeah, I could see her being strategic here and being like, "Tell me about the swimming hole." I do that with my kids. I was doing that with my kid today because if you go right to the danger point, they're gonna clam right up. Yeah, so you do have to work into it a little bit. Like my kid was coming home all pouty, and I could tell something happened. But if I asked like what happened at school, he'd be like, nothing. And so instead it was like, how was art? He talked to me about art. It was like, what are you painting right now? He talked to me about what he was painting. And I was like, okay, great. Seems like something else might have happened today. Like now he's willing to like talk. I've warmed him up a little bit. That's what I felt like with the swimming.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah. And then here, this is great. No, Tumo's at the parade with the man. I need her to think about the man because the kid is clearly thinking about the man, right? So I need her to think about the man. Okay. She's like, did you talk to him? She's focused on Tumo. And I at least need her, like she tried to sound casual is great, but I need a beat here where you tell me why she's trying to sound casual. And I need a beat here where she's at least acknowledging what man. She doesn't have to say that yet, but she needs to acknowledge like what man who's taking things. Does that make sense?
Yes, because she's got an early warning system in her mind of anything that could be dangerous for Tumo. So the minute she hears anything that makes her worry more, she's going to be alert to it.
Yeah. And I don't think right now the conversation is structured as what worries her is that he missed school. But all of the kids miss school.
Yes.
right? So that's not what should worry her. What should worry her is that there's a weird man taking things away from him at this parade. Like that's the warning sign. So you might want to say here, like, did you talk to him? You might want to be like, she tried to sound casual, but she didn't want to come out and ask directly about the man. And then say, like, how did Tumo seem? Or like, was Tumo having a good time? Like getting into like what's happening in this weird relationship with Tumo and this man. And then here's another one where I need more of a response than just her vocalization. A lot of shook his head. They only stayed a little while, but he saw me and pointed the frisbee under his arm before the man took it. A lot of keeps coming. He's like, he was there, but a man took it away from him. No, Tumo's at the parade with the man, right? Like a lot of really want.
Yeah. It's not so much that Lata is obsessed with the man, but he is obsessed with the frisbee.
No, yeah,
what's supposed to happen with the frisbee, right?
Yeah.
Remember that she gave them the frisbee. It was hers.
But in her brain, him saying the man 3 times is got to send an alarm. Like, what in the world? Yeah. So here, I just want her to have a moment where you bring us into what's happening in her brain at this point.
Okay.
Right. And it just needs to be a sentence. Right. Like it just needs to be one beat where she's like, this was too much. And she had to ask, right? Like, who is the man who took the frisbee?
In a light voice.
In a light voice. Yeah. She had to ask in a voice that wouldn't bring concern. Who was the man was it his uncle? And this is great. This is such a great conversation with a kid. I don't know. It's so great because the kid has built up this like, this thing happened that is the end of my world. And then she's like, can you give me a name? And he's like, I don't know any names. So yeah, it was really well done. I liked the conclusion of it, made me laugh. I was like, that's really great. Yeah. Any questions about that before we get into this transition?
No, the solitary time, you're perfectly right. I'll get rid of it. It doesn't need it.
You don't need it. Yeah.
Charges, full stop.
Yeah, charges. So Tumo had been out in public. Yeah, you don't need it. She can just continue to ruminate on, yeah. Yeah, and then now we're moving into the strong part. Here, I might put this in the form of a question because you have such good kind of questioning up here. Was it the uncle who took the frisbee? The batter disc itself wasn't important, though it probably the only ray of sunshine in Tumo's loveless life, but because of its origins, it just felt like the frisbee represented a tangible part of herself, which she'd been able to give him. Great paragraph. Lata's comments had added to her disquiet. Her sense that everything Tumo did, every choice he faced, was dictated by somebody else. And then she asks a question. I might phrase this as a question too, to keep that like reflective feeling to it instead of telling me. Right now it feels a little decisive, right? Lana's comments had added to her disquiet, period. Why was it that every time Tumo faced a choice, he was distracted by somebody else? How was a teacher meant to empower? Does that make sense? Like bringing this thought here into her questioning of like the fairness of the world as opposed to a statement of fact.
That's right. When you go through it like that, when I read your comment, I couldn't see how turning it into, I got the point about the format, but I thought I was going to lose the reflection that I really wanted to be in there, but you've just shown me you can do it. So that's
cool. Yeah, and my comment's not well written. That's why we do phone calls.
Okay.
Yeah, leaning just on my comments is problematic. Yeah, and so here, I just want to connect these two thoughts. They're great thoughts. Now home, she dumped her gear on the bed, kicked off her sandals, and filled a glass. The unease about Tumo persisted. So I want to show the contrast between those. Filled a glass, comma, but the unease she felt about Tumo persisted. And bring that connection. And now we're back to where we started.
Yeah.
Yeah, so great. I loved this chapter, Carol. It was really, really well done. Anything else you want to talk about?
I think it's good.
Okay, great. I'm gonna thank you for letting me do this for everybody to hear, because it's so great. I love it when we can take a chapter that's really good and talk about it, because I think it
Still
yeah,
plenty to work on, Jeff. So
yeah, that's good. All right, I'll stop recording and we can talk a little bit more.